Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, it's game day. The Carolina Hurricanes are rolling into town on a losing streak, while for Ottawa, it's their final home game before a 5-game roadie.
And we have friend of the show, Marc Methot, on the show as he tries to defend his case wearing a Leafs jersey on live TV.
I wish him luck doing that. We'll get into that. Plus, David Perron suspended for how long? That's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 936 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. You can follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Today is Tuesday, December 12th. We've got a big Sens game tonight, but Pilsy, we've got a pair of suspensions to talk about first.
Yeah, and I'm not sure which one is the more egregious violation. That's what we're going to get into here. One is an aggressive retaliation cross-check to the face of a player that's trying to help an injured player, so not good. The other is a beloved Ottawa boy, former Sens player, wearing a Leafs jersey on air, live television. So you tell me which one is worse here.
Well, I don't know. Let's bring on the culprit. It's Marc Methot, friend of the show. It is time 17, I believe. I've almost lost count. Meth, welcome back. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Great intro there, by the way.
Well, you know what? Thanks for having me is right, because I gave you an indefinite suspension. Look, when I come down to see you, give you a little dap at the intermission, I'm not expecting to turn the corner and see you wearing maybe the most disgusting piece of clothing known to history. Can you please explain yourself for the people at home?
One of our, I don't even know if it was one of the producers. It could have been one of the higher ups. Reached out the week before the game and had this idea that O and I would maybe have like this back and forth as far as the jersey exchange goes and make a game out of it or something. And he and I both obliged. You know, it sounds like a great idea initially when you're just kind of talking shop over the phone, but it's another entire different scenario when you're doing it in person and you have to put it on. And I kind of joked about it with you there, Ross, when I saw you briefly. It was quick because there's so many people, but I kind of joked how like my peripheral, like just talking to the camera, I couldn't get my eye off the fact that I was wearing that, like that blue jersey. Right. So it was hilarious.
Oh,
I know. Outrageous. It was great when O had to wear it.
Yes.
Cause you know, he lives and dies by the Leafs, obviously. And I think the same can be said about me, I suppose, with the Sens. And I can still remember though, halfway through that second period before the Leafs scored their second goal. Yeah. Look at my it's so good.
That's a defeated man.
So during the second, you know, O-Dog Ward in the first intermission, and then during the second period, while the play was happening, the Leafs scored that first goal almost immediately. And I think there was a good stretch of time there before they scored that follow-up goal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So after that first goal, like halfway through the period, he looked over. He's like, "Hey, you're going to throw that on yet or what?" I'm like, "Well, we're still tied." I'm like, was that not sort of like the rule here? And he goes, "Well, no, you got to win the period." So in any case, I was on the hook there and I had to wear it, but it was fun. We had a blast doing it. Had a lot of laughs.
Yeah, well, I think you're very lucky that David Perron took the heat off of you in terms of suspensions and, you know, the ire of the Senators fan base. I teased it in the intro, so I guess to, you know, break the news down, 6-game suspension for David Perron off of the cross check to the head of Artem Zub. Like, where does that rank with the most egregious things you've seen on the ice, Meth?
The whole thing was wild because that evening on Saturday, I was at the Hard Rock, or I should say the Rideau Carlton that's converting to a Hard Rock. I was at the casino doing a watch party through the team. So there was probably about 100 fans there in this like small kind of packed up room and the big screens. And it was really well done. Anyway, so we're watching the period. I'm sitting with a bunch of fans and we watched it all happen in real time. And, initially when you watch the first replay, you're watching the play happen and you don't really know what happened, right? You're seeing Larkin laying there on the ice. And I'm thinking like, there was nothing that really stood out during the play. That's sort of how much I guess I should be careful with what I say, but I think I believe it was an accident and I don't think it was egregious. And I think that is exact proof in that when I was watching the play live, you couldn't really pinpoint when it happened other than, you hate seeing a player lying face first on the ice. That was terrible. So, a couple replays into it and you're kind of breaking it down. And I was getting texts from like Brass and I think Noodle sent me a text too. And we all agreed almost instantaneously that it had nothing to do with Joseph. I mean, Joseph kind of gave him a shove in the back, boxing out, whatever. But you can see Parker Kelly coming in. Like, it was pretty obvious. And that's my point. Seeing all the discourse, it's wild how many people had their blinders on. And I know it's your team bias, you're a fan, you're a Detroit Red Wings fan, you're emotional because your captain's laying there. But I mean, to me, right off the get-go, I knew almost immediately that it wasn't suspension worthy. And then Perron happens and he goes after Zub. To me, that was one of the worst I've seen. Because there was for me, it was the quick sprint towards Zub, all while having your stick up. Like, it was clear what he wanted to do, right? He wanted to take the guy's head off. This wasn't like a situation where Artem Zub puts his hand up and looks like he might extend his arms out. And then Perron feels like he has to counter that and go at him as well. And then maybe inadvertently hits him in the head. It wasn't that. This is a direct targeting of Artem Zub's head. So this isn't me being some troll, like pro Sens troll right now here talking about this. That's why I posted 10 games. And I was obviously being a little dramatic with that because of the weight of the play itself. But to me, 6 games is more than fair and appropriate. It could have been 8, and I don't think too many people would have barked back at that either. Well, you actually set the tone for me, and I want to let Pilsy jump in here too. But when I saw you say like, hey, like throw him in jail and throw away the key type thing, I compared the play to Bertuzzi on Steve Moore. I said it's the worst. But there is a little bit like the way that he like fell on top of him too. Okay, well, Moore was facing the other way, obviously, and Bertuzzi came from behind. But I mean, they're equally as malicious. It's just the outcome was a little different, and obviously Larkin was a lot more fortunate. But when you're using a stick, like, there's no give in there, right? Like, you guys know, like, anybody that plays hockey can understand this. I mean, you can do serious damage to somebody. So, and it's funny because I was getting responses from some people. Most people agreed, though, granted, but I was getting the odd reply like, well, if Mark, if this happened to you, your wires would have crossed and you would have done this. And it's like, well, maybe, but I wouldn't rush some random guy that had nothing to do with the play. I'd make sure that my eyes saw what I thought, right? Like, as far as like who was at fault here, who did what. And I would not lead with my stick. I'd probably grab the guy by the collar and challenge him or something. So anyway, brutal play. I like what the league did. I can't believe people still assume that, like, even to this day, I'm still getting random tags, like in some of the conversations that I was involved in. People are still in the belief that Joseph should get a game. And I'm like, how do you even remotely justify that? It was just he pushed him from behind and he skated into Parker Kelly's glove, so to speak. So anyway, I think the league handled it well in the end.
I think part of that bias, Meth, is that Red Wings fans are very aware that there's history between Joseph and Larkin, and just having Joseph being a part of that play automatically turns that on in their brain that it was a malicious intent to injure, and with the result that happens, right? Which is an unfair bias.
I was just going to say, but Joseph was on the receiving end of that one, right? The initial time?
He threw it first. He threw it.
Oh, and then Larkin came at him with like the side swipe, right? That's right. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. It was none of that matters. Not like all of that is irrelevant. I've had plenty of run-ins with players when I played the game, whether it was a dirty play against me or maybe I'm sidestepping like Dion. I can still remember Dion. Like, Dion took a run at me in Columbus once. when I was skating the puck. This is when I used to skate with the puck a lot more earlier on in my career. And D like I sideswiped him just enough, but he caught my leg, and it was like a knee on knee. Now in that moment, I didn't do much about it, and eventually I ended up fighting him at some point. But like my point is, never once did I think I'm going to swing my stick at this guy's head. You know what I mean? So you have to be in control, and it's a contact sport. Shit happens, and before you start targeting a certain guy, like at least know for sure that he was the one responsible. I think that's where I stand mostly on this.
And I think the worst part about it, Meth, is after watching the replay a couple more times, you can see like Perron is actively engaged with Zub. So he, of anyone on the ice, should actually know that Zub wasn't the guy that did it. They were jostling back and forth. And then
correct,
Perron kind of circles around and then looks at Zub, and Zub's actively motioning for help because Larkin's down.
That's the worst part, right? Is that he was literally calling the Red Wing bench's trainer to come on the ice. Like you could see him motioning, and he still get the worst of it. So I feel bad for Artem. That's a scenario though. If I were if I got that shot to my face, I don't know what I would have done after when I got up. I probably would have
talk about wires crossed, eh, Meth? Like you're
and I'm not like a tough guy. I never was. I had a very long fuse, but I mean, if somebody, Superman jumps at me leading with their stick, and I was surprised with Zub's reaction there, but he was probably so caught off guard that he didn't know what to do, right? in the chaos. So I don't blame him either for that.
I mean, he's just back from a broken jaw himself.
I know. That's a good point.
Everybody's talking about Larkin's injury history. It's like, man, that's something to be known about. I've been calling David Perron a fake tough guy for years, and it's caught up to him. 6-game suspension here. On the other side, we're going to discuss if rivalries are back, because Meth infamously said a while ago that, hey, rivalries aren't what they were. It was the ballet of Ontario last Thursday and earlier in the season. But is this Detroit Red Wings Ottawa Senators rivalry something that will continue to build, or do we need playoffs for that to happen? All and a game day preview. Sens hosting the Carolina Hurricanes. Can't wait for Meth's breakdown on Rourke Chartier's shift-by-shift performance over the last week. That's all coming up next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Oh, you're a prick.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Mary J's. Mary J's is a locally owned cannabis dispensary in the Ottawa area. It started off with 3 best friends making a life-changing decision and working hard to get their dreams to come true. Now, through hard work and dedication, they have 4 stores in the Ottawa area. The Ottawa locations are Riverside South, Orleans, Greeley, and Russell. Mary J's offers the best and newest products in the market, with many new additions to the menu every single week. Mary J's has everything you might want, whether you're a rookie or a grizzled vet. Mary J's offers competitive pricing. In fact, they will price match any store in Ottawa. That means you are guaranteed to get the best price around at a Mary J's location. And they offer the best customer service around. One of their friendly bud tenders are always ready to assist. And one of the owners, Dashi, absolute beauty, is a die-hard Sens fan. So go to one of the stores, say what up to Dashi, pick his brain about the Sens and all the newest, latest products that Mary J's has to offer. Check out any of their 4 Ottawa locations. It's Mary J's.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Sleeper. Do you like daily fantasy? Play Daily Fantasy on Sleeper. It's the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Podcast Network. Now, daily fantasy is great because you can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy here on Sleeper. These are all possible scenarios for the season. There's so many of them to choose from, but you have a chance to win big with daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash. Now, the Senators are a great team to bet on when you have that, right? You got Brady Tkachuk. You got Claude Giroux, guaranteed if he gets 1, he gets 2. And Jake Sanderson, Drake Batherson, even Eunice Corpusalo in goal. You can pick saves. You can pick goals, assists, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, Sens fans. 100 times payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention, get your picks right, and you could win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Available to U.S. customers for now. All right, Pillsy. And Meth. Welcome back. Locked On Senators here. It's a game day. The Senators' last game before a 5-game road trip. Now, Meth, this is a wild couple days for the Senators. They have everything we just spoke about and more in a 5-1 win over Detroit on Saturday. Sunday is the Halloween party. Then you've got the Chio visit on Monday, which I know you've been a part of in the past as well. Like, how do you do all those different things in 3 straight days and then reset and focus on a hockey game against a hungry Carolina team tonight that's lost a bunch of games in a row, just had your favorite, the players only meeting? They're going to seemingly be ready to go here.
Yeah, I think, and I believe Pittsburgh had one the other day too, and then they followed it up with a huge loss. So I've always been super critical of I don't want to deviate too far from what I'm supposed to talk about here, but those player only meetings, man. You're sitting in the room. Let's say you've just lost a game. You go to your stall and you can typically tell when one's coming because no one's getting undressed. Everyone's just kind of sitting there in their gear and it's quiet and the coaches aren't in the room. So you're waiting, and then eventually your captain starts to speak up, starts talking about how everything needs to be better. And I'm okay with that. Your captain, that's his job. Where I have an issue with these player only meetings is when it starts to drag out and every other mouthpiece in the room feels like they need to contribute something. And it's usually word salad. Come on, boys, we got to do this. And you're rolling your eyes at this point because you've already heard your captain address the group. And, you're not stupid. You're playing in the NHL. You're a good player by most standards in pro sports. And so you're able to understand when things are going well and things aren't going well. So anyway, I always wince when I hear about these player only meetings because they never work out the way they should. It ends up being, Johnny Appleseed on your fourth line talking about what needs to be done differently. And it's like, just shut up. No one needs to hear what you have to say right now. You played 7 minutes tonight. Just shut your mouth. So that's my experience playing. I never said anything in it. I listened. I wasn't a bad teammate about it. I absorbed everything. I didn't scoff, but afterwards you're kind of like, what was that? Like, come on, and anyway, so I don't even know what we were supposed to talk about because I felt the need to address that. But I think with Carolina tonight, you mentioned them and then I think they had a player meeting as well. Right. So
that's just it. And Meth, have you ever seen a road trip like this? The team went from Winnipeg to Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and are now flying cross country to play in Ottawa.
I know. When that works to their advantage.
Lost every single game along the way.
I know. So my concern is that it's Carolina, right? Like they're having this uncharacteristic 4-game losing streak. I think it's 4. Is it 4 or 5? It's 4.
4.
Yeah, it's 4. So, I in most cases, I would say I still feel good about Ottawa because they had a very emotional game the other night. They played very well last couple games. So I just think for me, where I stand on it is that, you're still playing against a really good hockey team now. So I'm 50-50 on tonight's game. I really hope Ottawa pulls this one out. I think this is a huge win for them if they can do it. Just because this team needs confidence right now. Like if you're the Sens, you can break down X's and O's all you want, but having that ability to just take over a game, lock it down, string together more than 1 or 2 wins, that'd be nice. So I think working towards that over this tough schedule that they have up until basically the new year, and they're playing a bunch of, playoff position teams. You want to prove to people you're a playoff team. Now's the time to do it. So I think with Carolina, they're going to be tired, but they're also going to be pretty freaking motivated. So if anything, it'll be an entertaining game.
Now, Meth, you're in the position of the Ottawa Senators, like you mentioned, they're coming off an emotional division rival win. They're at home now up against the Carolina Hurricanes, and you're seeing them on this long road trip down bad 4-game losing streak. What's the mentality you have as the Senators? Like, is this kind of, okay, they're down bad, let's jump on them here? Or like you mentioned, like, whoa, we better be a little bit careful here. This is going to be a team that's going to come firing out because they're a little bit pissed off with the way things are going.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's the latter. I think no matter how poorly they've been playing lately, I think as a player, Carolina. You're aware of how good this team is, right? So I don't know that Ottawa needs to do much different though. And I will say this, and I've said this before. You watched the game the other night. Ottawa has the type of team that just seems to thrive when it's playing with emotion.
Yep.
That brings energy into its group. And I'm not talking about, I feel like I always have to say this because I don't want people thinking I'm advocating for goons and stuff like that. But, getting into the scrums and, bringing that passion into the group. And this applies to most teams, obviously, but Ottawa especially. I mean, their leader's Brady Tkachuk. You look the way he plays, right? So that trickles down into your lineup. And I think with the approach for tonight, especially against a team like Carolina's kind of a dull team in many ways, right? Like they don't really have any donkeys running around all the time. You could argue now that things have changed a little bit.
Yeah,
with
you got one on the fourth line there.
Yeah. But I think, but overall, they're very structured, and they kind of play the way their coach wants to all the time, right? It's like they're responsible. They're defensively, they're pretty responsible. They've got some pretty consistent goaltending and a really good back end, which to me is the recipe for a good playoff team. But all in all, if you're Ottawa, draw the penalties. I know I always talk about having to play discipline, but I think with Ottawa, it's like get under their skin a little bit. Like, give them an extra little shot after a whistle sometimes, get into the goalie's face a little bit, do those things. I think that works to Ottawa's advantage. But all in all, just keep the pace going right now. You know what I mean? Like you've got good chemistry with some of your lines. I think all in all, the decors looked okay. Like really, I mean, they haven't been that bad. I've been very critical at times, but I've been very impressed with them lately. Brandstrom, like another guy that to me has been playing a lot better. I've caught myself now where I'm not really critiquing him as much as I used to. And I think he's just figuring it out now. He's starting to figure out the game. You're still going to see some lapses. You're going to still see him get out muscled once in a while, but he's moving the puck well. He's got some nice chemistry. I think, again, to finish my point, I think you're going to see a good effort from them tonight. It's just keeping it together for those 3 periods and not letting off. Maybe they come out of the first period with a 2-0 lead. Great. Don't sit on that. Focus on that second period now. We don't need another repeat where you squander a 2-goal lead, let the other team back into it.
We'll get into the Ottawa Senators as well, but with the Carolina Hurricanes, they're 14-12-1 on the season, 5th in the Metropolitan Division, and have lost 4 straight games in Canada by a combined score of 15-7. So they've been more than doubled up. 15 goals allowed in 4 games. That's something that's been uncharacteristic of this Carolina Hurricanes team all season, is they're just giving up so many goals. And you can blame bad goaltending to an extent, but this just isn't the Carolina Hurricanes that we've come to expect of the last number of years. They are currently sitting in 22nd in the league in least amount of goals allowed per game. They've given up 3.33 goals per game. I'll rip through the lineup here real quick. It's Sebastian Aho at center between Michael Bunting and Seth Jarvis. It's Jordan Stahl between Teuvo Teravainen and Martin Necas. We've got Jesperi Kotkaniemi with Jordan Martinook and Jesper Fast. The 4th line, Jack Drury between, drum roll please, we've got the final time. Well, first time, because he didn't play in the home opener. It's Brendan Lemieux.
I don't even know what he's thinking. He's just a complete brickhead.
Complete brickhead on the left wing there with Stefan Nason, Sens first-round pick back in 2011. On the back end, it's Jacob Slavin with Brent Burns. It's Brady Shea with Brett Pesce. And Dmitry Orlov is with Jalen Chatfield. We expect Peter Kochetkov in goal. Antti Ranta also in the mix there. So Pilsy, give me one lookout player, and then we'll get Meth in the mix here for the Ottawa Senators preview on the other side. And I still want to have that conversation about the Detroit Red Wings and Ottawa Senators rivalry.
I'm going to be looking out for number 86, Teravainen. He leads the Carolina Hurricanes in goals with 11, and I feel like this is a guy that's been kind of a consistent 20-goal scorer that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and he kind of gets time and space because guys are focused on the Sebastian Ahos. Now the Necas is no Svechnikov in this game, so you don't have to worry about him. But Teravainen's a guy that if you give him time and space, he can make you pay for it, and he's proving that with 11 goals this season. So I'm going to be looking out for him on that second line.
Yeah, and Matt, this team, kind of the class of the back end, right? Like top to bottom, there's not a whole lot of weaknesses there on defense.
No, they're deep. They've been together for a while. You've had the odd player interchange here and there, but I mean that top 4 alone, that's legit. That's a like an NHL playoff team, top team anyway. So I think they've obviously had some goaltending issues, as you guys mentioned. That goals against average isn't pretty, but like I said earlier, and I'll repeat it one last time. The concern is with a team like this, especially, I can't imagine too often where your head coach is reaming you in the media or you're having player meetings. This is very uncharacteristic for Carolina, which is my concern in that I don't know what you're going to get tonight. This team could be a ball of fire in the first 20, or maybe they just kind of, expend all that energy early on. Ottawa defends very well, and then Ottawa takes over. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm looking at Norris tonight. I think, we're starting to see glimpses now where to me, it just looks like he's got a little bit more confidence starting to finally creep into his game again. I don't know what the underlying numbers show. They may go against it. Who knows? But I'd love to see him get that shot going again. Like just give him a couple more cookies here. Let's get his confidence going. Cause you're centering that top line right now, arguably 1A, 1B, whatever, however you want to describe it. You would even argue, Tarasenko's line right now might be the best line, but I think all in all, having Josh Norris playing like Josh Norris can play is essential for this team. It's great that Tim Stützle is a perennial, going to be a perennial all-star. He probably already is, but I want to see Norris elevate his game a little bit more. I don't know what's been going on. We know he's missed a great deal of hockey, obviously, over the last 2 seasons. That has a huge play into it. We have to give him more runway. But I think now it's like, okay, you're getting into the swing of things here. Let's see it.
What's the tougher game to play as a player? The last game at home before a long road trip, or the first game back at home after a long road trip?
First game back. It was for sure. Cause you've been, you're road weary. You've been
Yeah.
in a hotel, haven't been eating great. You're eating out all the time, which to many people, I'm sure sounds great, but it's not. I mean, you get sick of eating at restaurants and all that greasy food. It's nice to get back in your house. So I think, and then more importantly, just better sleep, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're on the road and you're going from room or hotel to hotel, city to city, everything's inconsistent from your diet to your sleeping habits to your rest. It's funny when you're home, mostly you're at home, you're recovering on the couch, you're watching TV when you get home. When you're on the road, you don't really think much about it, but you're out and about, you're walking around downtown, you're seeing the sights. Although you may feel pretty good, you don't realize that you're getting tired. So I would say getting back from a long roadie is tough. But I don't miss it.
So we can circle December 23rd as a tough game. That's the next time the Sens will be at the CTC after tonight's game. They'll be hosting your old pal, Erik Karlsson, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. There you have it. Yep. Marc Methot is going to be here as well after a quick word. We'll get into the Sens lineups expected tonight and what happened behind closed doors, because the Senators, all their advanced stats since that 5-0 loss to Florida, they're all looking real sharp. So we'll get into all that right after a quick word. This is Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Guys, passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's what also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and even more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or you get your money back. It's that simple. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Check it out today, guys. eBay Motors.
All right, Pilsy. We got Meth here with us as well. It's a game day for the Ottawa Senators tonight at the Canadian Tire Center. We've got the Senators hosting the Carolina Hurricanes. It is a 7:00 start. The Senators 11-0. They were that record yesterday on December 11th, Alfie's birthday. So maybe that's the
Praise
good
Alfie.
voodoo that they need here to get above, because Meth, it honestly feels like they're allergic to being above 500. They get back to it all the time, but what do they like? Is there something that needs to be done to break through? Is it a mental block, or is it just, they just haven't been able to string enough great performances together?
It's just that's consistency, right? That's the difference between a playoff team and a non-playoff team. It's not much deeper than that. And, it's demanding more from everybody in the room. And, it's not good enough to just, have maybe one good game here this week and then mail it in for a couple. Not that anybody's trying to mail it in. I should be very careful when I say that, but I think once you get to this level, the margins are thin, right? Like between teams, doesn't matter if you're in 13th place or in your conference or you're in second or third. You can lose any night, but the good teams stick to their system. They're disciplined. They move the puck well. They manage the clock properly. There are all those different variables at play, right? So I think with Ottawa, I feel like we can be a little hard on them at times. This is still a very young team, and I know people are sick of hearing it. I've certainly pushed back against that statement before as well, saying, some of these young guys have already got 4 or 5 years under their belt now. I don't know how young they are anymore, but but maturity is a big thing. And there's a difference between a team filled with, 20, like guys in their late 20s, early 30s. Like if you look at Carolina, for example, and a team like the Ottawa Senators, where your core guys are all, sub 25, maybe a couple guys in their later 20s. So I think we have to give them a little leeway there. But yeah, I'm like everybody else. I want to see this team succeed, and I want them to be consistent. And I think that's just the issue lately.
One thing I'm looking at for a key to this game, Meth, is the Carolina Hurricanes are the best team in not allowing shots per game. They only allow 25 shots per game. Like, that's super low. And you mentioned it. You look at that back end, they play a defensive structured game. So you would think, okay, they're barely allowing any shots. The defense is great. They can't be allowing that many goals. But on the flip side, the goaltending has been absolutely atrocious. Is this one of those scenarios where you look at they don't allow shots, the goaltending's been bad, just chuck everything on net? Or is that more the case, like, we got to make sure we're getting prime scoring opportunities because they do such a good job of not allowing us to get a lot of shots on net? Like, how do you kind of balance that out?
When you're playing a good defense core, I mean, you should have this approach every game, but when you're playing against a very good D-core, there's nothing more difficult to defend against than a team that's just throwing everything at the net and having numbers at the net. So, and it's got to be more than just guys like Brady. And I know there are others that do it well, but you have to have that mentality that you're just going to crash the net at every opportunity, because the more chaos, like, good defensemen work very well with structure, right? If it's a structured game and your opponent's not really testing you that much at net front, it's just, constant 3-on-3s or 3-on-2 rushes or whatever it may be. That's pretty standard. And good defensemen that have been around just know how to go through those motions. And it's almost just like clockwork. But the moment you start having point shots getting through, and yet maybe have 1 or 2 guys that you're having to fight for space with at net front, that's when it gets very hairy. And, for me, like, that was always my issue. It's like, okay, like, when you start having numbers and there's rebounds everywhere, because your goalie's going to spit the bit once in a while, and you've got guys scrambling everywhere, it's just so chaotic that you can't really gain any control. So as cliche as that may sound, it's so real that if you're Ottawa tonight, your mentality is you're getting into the zone. Of course, you don't want to pass on prime opportunities, and sure, you don't want to throw everything from everywhere. You don't want to just give the puck away. But I think as a forward, when you're getting around the net, you're maybe a winger, and your centerman or your other winger has a good established net front presence, just throw it at the net and then follow it up. He's going to be there battling. You can follow that up, help him out at net front. So it's stuff like that. And then, of course, just stay out of the box. Do your best to play a disciplined game, force their hand. If you have a power play, be sharp, get some momentum from it. You might not score a goal. Get some good puck movement, run your cycle, make them turn. You start doing all those little things, and you're tiring that back end. Like, my real focus is on that back end right now. So the goal is finish your checks on them. It doesn't matter if you're some goal scorer, just run into them, constantly get in their way, make them skate, make them turn. You're going to get them very tired. They're road weary. They've been on the road for a long time. That should be your game plan. It's simple. It's not going to guarantee you a win, but it's going to give you an advantage.
Well, I actually covered their first game on this road trip in Winnipeg, and in the first 16 minutes of the game, the shots were 12-0 for Carolina. Like, the way you're describing to play, that's how Carolina plays. Everything on net, and then they want to be the first touch after that first rebound is created and create chaos in the defensive structure, because they're so consistent of knowing where they're supposed to be on the offensive side. That's how Rod Brindamore kind of played in his game too. So
exactly.
Interesting to see. Funny enough, though, they were out shooting Winnipeg 12-0. Winnipeg gets their first shot, and as the Bronx cheers going that they finally get a shot, the second shot goes in the back of the net. They win the game at the end of it. And then the wheels have fallen off for Carolina since then. And I mean, injuries, they're never an excuse. Ottawa's a team that knows that, right? They've been dealing with their fair share, but no Svechnikov is huge for them. He's been a great player. Only 1 goal, but he's still up to 11 points in 16 games for them this season. So they're going to expect a lot out of some guys who haven't played that well. Dash 10 for their captain. Probably not the best thing you want to see. Only 3 goals in 27 games for Jordan Staal as well. As we turn our attention to the Ottawa Senators in tonight's game. The Ottawa Senators come into this game with a consistent lineup. Are you kidding me? Like the same lineup that they had over the course of more than one game. It feels like they're changing things all the time here, but for them to be able to come in as is with Josh Norris between Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux, with Tim Stützle alongside Vladimir Tarasenko and Drake Batherson, with Ridley Gregg back at center between Dominic Kubalik and Mathieu Joseph, and then Rourke Chartier between Yuri Smejkal and Parker Kelly. On defense, the one tweak that worked so well last game, Chychrun back with Zub, Sanderson still with JBD, and Eric Brandstrom is with Travis Hamonic. We are recording this before the morning skate, but all expectations are that Eunice Korpisalo will get another opportunity here in goal. So the Senators, 11-11. Meth, before you even mentioned Norris, I had him as the highlighted player in today's show, but we also have some locked-on players to get to. Pilsy, lead us off.
My locked-on player for tonight's going to be Jake Sanderson. You talk about the back end in Carolina being really tough to play against. Any pair that has Jake Sanderson on it now, I kind of consider the shutdown pair, especially now that JBD is his partner. That's a really good defensive pair. So you're going to need Jake Sanderson and JBD to really be shutting it down, trying to do to the Carolina Hurricanes what their D-core does to their opponents. And I'm going to be looking for Jake Sanderson to really kind of be the controller of pace of play and be the guy that's planning how they're going to break into the zone here, use his skating to his advantage. And I think he's going to have a really big game tonight. He's coming off, he's got a 2-game point streak and assist in Toronto and that empty netter up against Detroit. So I like the way this is shaping up for Jake Sanderson to have a big game.
Love it. And for me, I'm going with Drake Batherson on a 5-game point streak right now. He's got 7 points. And I think for a lot of people, they're even happier that he's +6 over the last 5 games. A guy who's been deep in the minuses for a large portion of the last couple seasons. So great to see Drake looking confident with the puck, the way he manipulated in the offensive zone to create the space to give that saucer pass to Stützle. We know that that's the bread and butter of his game, being creative and being able to make plays. And that's going to help this team against a team that makes plays all over the ice. So I'm going to be watching Drake Batherson tonight. And Meth, I'm going to flip you. The citizens voted, by the way, every morning, Meth, on game days. You know it on Twitter. You're following along at Sens Central. And everyone already knows you can find Meth's hot takes over Marc Methot 3 on Twitter. But I was surprised because whenever we put Tim Stützle and or Brady Tkachuk in the Sens in terms of the lockdown player to watch poll, it's usually a unanimous choice between the two. Today we put both of them because we wanted to split the votes a little bit. Well, what do you know? Ridley Gregg comes in and gets 41% of the fan vote, leading. Like, what is it that enamors him to you, and why he makes this team so much deeper at such a young age?
It's funny you guys brought him on there just by chance through the fans, because I had him circled here as well on my third line, because I just think having him now, first of all, you just bring in more depth, which is the obvious case, right? You've got a very competent third line centerman now that plays with a little bit of an FU attitude. He's not running around per se, but you can just tell, like, for his age, it's hilarious to me when I'm watching him, especially live in the building, like the behind the play stuff, like the extra little shot here when someone pushes him, or, you know, it just kills me. I love it. I love his compete, and I think he's going to be an incredible player. Go ahead there, Ross.
There's 2 plays that stand out. One, I'll send you the clip, but there's a play in junior where he's skating by and the guy's just in the slot, not paying attention, and he just lifts his stick and launches it into about the 10th row up. He's just like, hey, should have been holding his stick tighter. I'm with you, because when I saw him play, he was with the Brandon Wheat Kings playing here in Winnipeg before they lost their WHL team. Every single time, there's no drive-bys. There's drive-by shootings with Ridley Gregg. He just gives a little tap. It's just a little tap, little tap, little tap every time he goes by a guy. You do not have an easy night when you're up against Ridley Gregg.
And that's what it's funny you say that. That kind of falls in line with what I mentioned earlier as far as like what the game plan should be tonight and not flying by. I mean, anytime you have a puck as a D-man, you know, you're used to moving it and then getting your feet moving and getting up the ice. And you've always got a little bit of, you've always got a little momentum in your stride as it is too. So when a player gets in your way like that and just kind of pushes you up against the wall or gets you at a full stop, you have to start over again. You've got to get your feet going again. You got to build up the speed again. And Ridley's so good at that. He's always just kind of running into a guy, and it's almost kind of lazy where he'll just kind of put himself into the guy, and it's irritating. Like I'd be very irritated in the moment if Ridley finished a check on me. You know what I mean? So Props to him there. I mean, he's a competitor, and I think you're going to see that grow even more over the next couple seasons when he gains more confidence and understands, like, okay, listen, like, F this guy, like, I belong here. I'm not a young gun anymore. So very happy with that. And I think more importantly, if you look at it from like a big picture standpoint, it's just depth again, right? You've got a legitimate third line center finally back in the lineup. You guys mentioned you got a healthy group. And so, the last couple games, or at least the ones they've won, I haven't recognized this group at all. I mean, they've had some brutal games here and there, but now, like, they're stringing together some wins, a huge one the other night against Detroit. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm still a little shell-shocked, though, when it comes to the betting or making predictions, because I just don't know what version you're going to get on any given night. But when they're healthy and they're rolling like this, I mean, they're a heck of a hockey team. So it's just being consistent and trying to stay healthy, which is very hard to control.
Well, and Meth, you talk about betting and prediction and stuff. And in a rare case, the Ottawa Senators are home underdogs. They got the plus beside their name here. And
Hammer, money line.
Up
I'm
against a team.
Plus.
Yeah, you got to hit those
numbers.
pluses. And up against a team that's on a long road trip that they've lost all 4 games. Carolina, they're mounting a war on Canada, going west, and now they're at the capital. You got to shut them down and end this thing once and for all. But it's
a concern, though. But it's still concerning, right? Because it's like, where's this? Like, how are you getting out of the slump? Like, is tonight that slump buster? Like, are you using the Sens now? Like, that's my worry. I don't know what you're going to get from Carolina, but the way Ottawa's been playing, at least gives me confidence, right? They're playing with authority. They're playing with passion. There's purpose. So I like where they're at. So if they're ever set up for a game against a team that's desperate for a win, I like the positioning for Ottawa right now.
I like it too. I like it.
All right. I got a couple final questions for you. I'll let Pillsy, I threw you one on Twitter if we want to get into that. Otherwise I will. But do you know Jacques Martin at all?
We interviewed him on the podcast a couple years ago. But I mean, as far as like one-on-one conversations go outside of that space, not really. But I mean, I know enough just from hearing about everybody that's ever played with him, or for him, I should say. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys want me to comment on that, but it was a no-brainer. I mean, you've got a defensive tactician helping a group now that seemingly has struggled with structure in their own zone. So, I mean, what more do you want? It's a no-brainer.
Oh, it's so good. And our guy Doodling Daryl had a great sketch. He's he's in his workshop. I've actually got it here. I'll pull it up for everyone watching on YouTube, and go check out Doodling Daryl, man. He's so talented, and I always love his work. But he's in there working, and he used to make the players do the post-game interviews on the bike. So he's got all of his bikes lined up for Christmas. And, he's going to go there. Good to have you back, Coach, with Alfie coming in. He's got his 2 Stanley Cups there from his time in Pittsburgh, and then his old Jack Adams from when he was Coach of the Year back with the Ottawa Senators. So I want to give Daryl a bit of a shout out there, because and kind of funny, he's got all the players with bikes. He's also got DJ on a bike.
Does he? Yeah, it's small.
Yeah.
I see it on the end.
Yeah, DJ, Drake, Josh, Stu, and Brady are getting the bikes here from Jacques Martin. Go check him out, Doodling Daryl, for more of that kind of thing. But it's too early to be giving him credit for the way the team's played the last 5 games, isn't it? Maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends how you look at it, right? Like, I know for a fact he's been going to games for a while. Everyone knows he's been going to the arena. This is before he was hired. Just a lot of people do that. Claude Julien was seen at the rink a bunch of times too. Anybody that's from the area that's no longer working still has their NHL pass. They can go watch hockey. So the nice thing with Jacques, I guess my point is, he's already got a pulse on the group, right? It's not like he came in blind, not really that aware of the group or the team, and has to catch up a little bit. I mean, he's already caught up. So would that influence the outcome over the last couple games? I'm not so sure there, but there's a mental thing, right? As a player, I mean, a team just hired another prominent role here with the group, and it's like, that can shake you up a little bit as a player, thinking, okay, like, they're starting to make moves here. Things are going well. Did they bring him in because we're playing like dog shit in our own zone? Like, it does have that psychological effect, right? So, but I will never discount anything with regards to Martin, potentially him, having some words with the coaching staff or some of the players. I mean, he carries a lot of respect and influence, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe he had a few words with someone and maybe that had a bit of an effect on one of the outcomes of the game. So who knows?
Yeah, I'm not sure what impact it's had, but I'm pretty sure it's not nothing, right? Like I think
Exactly.
there's something
Yeah.
going on there, and it's had some sort of impact. Final topic for me here, Meth. We talked about it. The Battle of Ontario this year has been the ballet of Ontario. It's been super disappointing. No physicality, no animosity, just kind of another regular season game. But now you're looking, the Ottawa Senators have already played the Detroit Red Wings 3 times, and at the CTC in Sweden, and then now in Detroit in 3 different locations. And they've been heated rivalries with lots of physicality, lots of drama, lots of storylines. Is this becoming kind of the new Atlantic Division rivalry? Because these teams in Ottawa and Detroit, they're kind of in the same spots, getting out of the rebuild, trying to jockey for the same position here. Is this the new one we're going to be latching onto? Because it seems that way for me.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it there. It's certainly looking that way right now, right? And I I had this conversation. We talked about it during the show the other night with O'Dog and I and Cheryl, and we were talking about rivalries. And I think they are starting to disappear a little bit, only because of the way the game's played now. It's a different game. And we were watching the Toronto game the other night on Thursday was it Thursday of last week? I forget what night. Yeah, it was Thursday. And I remember looking and pointing out, and O was doing the same thing. It's like players were swinging away from hits. Like there were like 3 or 4 legitimate opportunities on both sides where a player could have just absolutely laid out the guy. Like the player was completely unsuspecting, had the puck somewhere in the neutral zone, and the opponent just kind of swung off, and it was a bit of a flyby. And I was thinking, like, really? Like, you're not gonna but that's just the way the game's played now. It's a lot different now. Everyone wants to score goals. Your third, fourth line guys are trying to get their goals. There's a lot less FUs between whistles. Now, granted, I couldn't be more wrong with that train of thought when you look at the Detroit and Ottawa rivalry right now that we're starting to see unfold before us. But overall, I mean, Toronto, Ottawa, that's a no-brainer with the crowd, hostile environment. You would just think there'd be more animosity, and there isn't. So, personally, I hate that, because I love seeing teams hate each other. That's just, and not from like the physicality standpoint all the time, but it's just like, you guys remember the old games. Like, remember the old series between like Pittsburgh and Philly, or
dude, you guys with Montreal in 2013.
Yeah, like it's same. And I was a part of those games. It was unbelievable. And it was, it was the shit talking, the stuff like it was everything. So anyway, my concern is that over the next decade, with the way things are trending now, teams are almost going to be somewhat unrecognizable, right? Like, I made this point on the air, where it's like, it won't really matter who the opponent is anymore. It's just another team, and you're going to watch the game, and but I'm hoping I'm wrong there, and maybe I'm exaggerating. But anyway, with Detroit and Ottawa, I'm loving what I'm seeing. It just takes one play. It takes one foul play to create this. And we're starting to see it now, and even more so now after last game. So the hope is that there'll be a lot of competitive games. They'll be spirited, because it draws you in. Like, I'm going to look forward to the next game. Like, I'm going to look at the calendar as a casual fan, and I'm going to find the game that they're playing against each other. And that's the effect that those things have on the product.
January 31st at Detroit, the season finale between those two teams. Which fan base gets in your mentions the most unhinged after something happens? Is it the Leafs still?
It's Toronto, yeah. And it's too bad, because, like, I'm friends with all these guys that played, or all the broadcast guys and women that work out of Toronto, that cover a lot of those games. I probably know more people in that organization than any other team in the league, like as far as friends go, and people that I used to play with. So, but I guess I bring it on myself, right? When I troll the base a little bit with the odd post here and there, it certainly attracts, the worst people online. So I made my bed with that, and I'm going to have to live with it.
Well, you made your bed putting on the jersey, and we're glad that we could bury the hatchet here, because I was pretty disappointed in you, I got to say, Meth. But you know what? You have to thank David Perron, because he really did take a lot of heat off of you.
Good. Well, that's good to hear. And again, if I have to do it again, so be it. But you guys have to know that it was a bet. It's not something I wanted to do, but I'm I'm an honorable man, and I'm a man of my word, and I lost the bet, and I had to put it on. So it's that simple.
I think what makes people also forgive you is for those who don't know, Meth did reject a trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs after leaving the Ottawa Senators. Meth, any final thoughts on today's show? You got anything you want to get off your chest?
I don't know. Is there anything I should get off my chest?
I don't know. You tell us.
Well, we're going away, so I'm missing the game tonight. I was supposed to work tonight, but I've got I don't want to say a medical emergency. I've got an MRI to do.
Calling in.
And it's a little later in the afternoon, so I wouldn't make it to the game on time. So I'm thankful that TSN was understandable there. Because if you guys saw Mike Johnson the other night, he was battling through something during the Toronto game. I don't know if you guys heard the first bit where he was attempting to do it. Anyway, but my point is, I've got that, and then we're going away for a week to Punta Cana with the kids here in 2 days. So not tomorrow, but the next day. So we're doing that. So that should be fun. Maybe I'll provide some updates while I'm away. I'm sure there'll be plenty of stuff for me to complain about that nobody else wants to hear, but I'll do it anyway. And then I come back and we've got a nice little cluster of games to do until the new year. So I'm looking forward to it.
Amazing. We love that. You're going to make sure you make the bed for Pilsy, Because he's make sure the beach stays all nicely groomed, Because Pilsy's on his way there pretty soon too.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
fired up.
Yeah. Like the timing was perfect. We had such a bad experience during March break. We had to go to my sister-in-law's wedding, which was a great wedding. But just with the kids staying in a villa and all that, I mean, I understand people don't like to hear this stuff, first world problems, but it wasn't a great trip because there's nothing to do for the kids. So now we're going to like a resort where the kids can have fun and there's water slides and shit for them to do. And so I'm have to be very patient this week, but I'm looking forward to spending a lot of time with them.
It's well deserved, man. We love hearing you on the TSN broadcasts. And you usually look, how did we almost finish the show? Do you dress yourself or do people pick suits for you?
Those are all my old suits.
I was going to say, I think the answer is clear, Ross.
In today's economy, do you think anyone's buying me suits?
No, but somebody could tell you. Somebody could tell you pattern on pattern. I don't know about
those
that.
Those are all mine. And I don't know. I've got like 15 jackets or whatever it is still. And I've kept a lot of my old ones, obviously. But it's just, I like to have fun with it. I think my new philosophy is pretty straightforward. I'm talking about hockey. Like it's a joke, right? Like I'm not a politician. I'm not curing cancer. I'm not a doctor. This isn't some important conference. I'm talking about a game, in the most unserious way. So I will approach it that way when it comes to what I wear. If I had more outlandish shoots, I'd wear them, but I only have so many. But I might make a couple, little trips to the store here over the next couple months and see if I can update my wardrobe a little bit more.
Well, that's great, man. I almost just instinctively went and packed some cold cuts because I thought I was going for a picnic when I saw you last time out. But no, dude, we appreciate you, man. Pilsy, any final thoughts?
Nope. Love having you back on the show, Meth, and go Sens go.
Go Sens go. Looking forward to having you back on the other side. Feel free to call in if there's anything bothering you while you're down.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe we do that while I'm gone. We'll do like a little rendezvous check-in from overseas.
Right on the beach. I absolutely love it. That's Marc Methot, former National Hockey League player, now TSN analyst and good friend of the show. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.